Hi there, I'm Bill at Eason Autoworks, and welcome to Chasing the Apex.
So Bill, can you tell me why you chose to be involved with the channel? I mean, what about you draws you to the channel and keeps you coming and keeps helping us get content, other than you've been part of it from the beginning? What about it, intrigues you?
Well, I think you're doing something different, and different is cool.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually driving the cars, you're talking to different people about their stories about their cars,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fun, it's supposed to be fun, right?
It is supposed to be fun. Well, how is that different than what you normally see? Because you and I share some similar opinions about Lamborghinis and donuts and parking lots.
Well, yeah, you see the look at me, show off kind of stuff, and anybody can do that. You're talking about real drivers, people who their car is their whole world, maybe.
Right.
It's not just an expensive bauble that they've got on that they're sitting in. Or
No,
something like
they're really
it's not an
driving these
accessory.
cars.
They're driving their cars. They're enjoying them, and I find that fun. I find that great. I work on these cars, but I don't want these cars to go into a garage and not get driven.
No, exactly. And so I think when we're talking about that, and we're looking at like what you were saying earlier, you're saying, well, you go out and drive, right? And that's what's different. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about specs. I just drive the car and talk about how it feels, right? Because people want to see, it's 5,000 horsepower, and I'm like, well, it's 5,000 horsepower, but it's got more nannies on it than Mary Poppins.
Right. How much can you actually use?
How much can you use? Right, so if you give me a 200 horsepower car that's putting all 200 horsepower down, that's a beast. You know what I mean? Versus, an 8,000 horsepower car that's putting, 100 down at any given time, or 200 down at every given time, with, transformer magic going on, to each wheel. Well, that's not necessarily the same driving experience.
No, it certainly isn't. Okay, no, it certainly isn't. I mean, the old phrase is, it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
Talking about Molly earlier, and Molly, you were teaching her how to drive after she was after she had bought the car. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Molly got really fortunate. She bought herself a 911, 87, 88, something like that. She didn't buy it for any other reason than she liked it.
Sure.
She didn't know much about. She wasn't a Porsche aficionado or a cultist or anything like that. She just liked that particular car, and she bought it.
I'm convinced they're a cult, by the way. Everybody that owns a Porsche is
not everyone, but there is a cult.
Yeah.
There is definitely.
They're beautiful cars, brilliant cars, though.
Yeah. No, it's a form follows function kind of a car. I really like that.
Okay.
But Molly bought a 911. The previous owner was an Enthusiast. Had some good modifications on it, not some frivolous modifications, and ones that really integrated with the car well. And it came time to rebuild the motor. But
sure.
At that time, Porsches hadn't spiked in value like they have recently. So rebuilding the motor.
Interesting, because I remember them when they were like buy here, finance here cars. You could pick them up for like $3 or $4 grand.
They were just used cars.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think a full rebuild on the motor was like $15,000, which is a lot of money at the time.
Sure.
It's still a lot of money, but it was more money. I think this was about 10, 12 years ago.
Sure. Still a lot of money to make.
It's still a lot of money. Yeah. So she, for some reason or other, she trusted me to build a motor, which was great. That's always a big thing to get somebody to spend a lot of money with you when you've only fairly recently met.
Sure.
It's a big ask. So I finish the motor for her, and I do all the break-in and all the find any little thing that's gonna be wrong with it before I tell the customer the car is ready for them.
Absolutely.
And I told her the same thing that I tell all my clients when I build them a motor. I said, look, you wrote the check,
Yeah.
but this is my motor.
Sure.
I'm going to teach you how to take care of it and how to use it. So I took her for a drive, and
like a drive around the block, like a dealer drive?
No. I have a test track. I call it the test track. It's about a 5-mile loop.
Okay.
And I know every pothole on the loop, and it's got a fast straight, it's got a hard left, a hard right, a really nice sweeping right where I can get the car into a drift.
So real driving.
Real driving, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I can practice. I can show them heel and toe techniques on the brakes and things like that. And I try to drive the car. I do that on every car I work on before. I do a before and after on every car I work on, so I know where I'm starting. So I have a baseline. And I try to drive the cars harder than the client is going to drive them.
Right.
So that I'm going to find anything before they find it.
Sure.
But back to Molly, we're driving in the car, and I'm teaching her how to drive the car, and she looks at me and she goes, "You're driving a lot more aggressive than I've ever driven it before." I said, "Well, this is how it likes to be driven."
Yeah.
And she's, "I've never shifted it. I've never driven it above 3,500 RPM." I said, "Oh, well, you're missing the whole point."
Sure.
And she rides horses. She's an equestrian. She's really enjoyed that. So I try to listen to what my clients are good at and what they know, and I try to relate it to the car. And I said, "You know how when you're riding your horse and there's a certain gait that everything smooths out?"
Sure.
And she said, yeah, it's a sweet spot. I said, yeah, exactly, there's a sweet spot. A car has that too. This car, the sweet spot is right about 4,800 RPM. And if you close your eyes, you can feel it. So she was in the passenger seat and I was in the driver's seat. And I said, I want you to close your eyes and I'm going to increase your RPMs 200 RPM at a time. And you tell me when the car smooths out. And damn if she didn't get it within 200 RPMs.
Oh, I bet.
You know, and she had this big grin on her face and this giant light bulb above her head. And then we switched.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, now I want you to use all your senses like you're riding a horse. You're not just piloting the car. You're driving the car. I want you to feel it through the steering wheel, feel it through your hips, feel it through your seat. Push your, show her how to get her seat just adjusted just right. And she just beamed. It was so much fun to watch her enjoy her car more. And she went on her way, and I asked her to come back in 1,000 miles, and for a checkup and stuff. And she came back and she dropped off the car, and she just another giant grin, and it's just really satisfying to see. And she goes, "Bill, you've increased my enjoyment of this car tenfold just by showing me how to drive it. I love driving the car the way you showed me how to drive it." And I said, "Listen, that's the way it wants to be driven. You're doing a service to your car."
Yeah.
And she goes, "I love it. It's great. I never want to give it up."
And this is interesting to me. So like most wrenches, most tuners, I mean, it looks to the external person, they're all about the money, right? And I would say that, I know you, but when I hear these stories, they're so endearing. I mean, it's really, these are personal relationships.
Oh, absolutely. But my business is different than the regular business. I mean, I could run a big shop and have 14 guys working for me and, raping people for, a $20 part that should cost $5.
Sure.
And yeah, you'll make more money doing that. But then you got to shop for customers.
Right.
Because sooner or later people figure out you're ripping off.
That's it.
And I hate shopping for customers. I want to have a small customer base of people that I like to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And life's too short to work with people you don't like.
That's true. So can I ask you a question? So because this is what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the PPI. Right, so you do what's called a pre-purchase inspection.
Right.
That pre-purchase inspection, I mean, in theory, saves a customer money. I mean, it really could.
Oh, absolutely. It's a value. It's an unqualified value. It's really hard to qualify because each car is different. But the money you save the money you spend on a pre-purchase inspection, you should save that the minute you buy the car.
Okay.
You should be able to negotiate the amount of money that you spend on a pre-purchase inspection off the price of the car. Or you can, for instance, not buy a ridiculously expensive car that's going to cost you a whole lot of money and save the whole price of the car just by not buying it.
So can you give me an example of that?
You want an expensive example or a cheap example?
I want the expensive example and the cheap example. And here's why, because everybody, the folks viewing this, they're ranging anywhere between, they're 18 years old and they're looking at a Pontiac Fiero and they just think it's the coolest thing because a YouTuber sold them to, and a 30-year-old dude who wants a McLaren 720S because another YouTuber told him to do it, you know, versus, hey, these are real drivers going, hey, these are real cars, and this is what you should be looking at in these price ranges. And so I'd love to hear the gambit. If I could hear, you know, a few of those stories.
Yeah, sure. So I had a client who really wanted a specific car. He was born in 1967. He wanted a 1967 car, and so that narrows your scope. You know, it narrows your range. So you're only looking at 1967 cars. There's only so many 1967 911s out there.
Sure.
So your goal is to find the best one, and he found one for me in Southern California at a Porsche restoration place that has a decent reputation.
Sure.
And so he paid me to go down there and check it out, and it was nowhere near what they pretended it was.
Okay.
In their advertising on their website. And it
when
was.
You say there was nowhere near, can you give me some examples of nowhere near?
Well, the way I explain it to people that can really get it is it's like online dating.
Sure.
The internet has changed everything. It's changed.
Sure.
It's changed dating. It's changed buying cars.
Mm-hmm.
Everything looks good in pictures.
Mm-hmm.
In online dating, the girls always lie about their age and their weight, and the guys always lie about their height and how much money they have.
True story.
You know?
True story.
So and everybody lies about how pretty their car is, the mileage in their car, how the condition of the car, how everything works. And so I'm kind of the intermediary to seek out the truth of what really is going on.
Bill Eason, the truth seeker.
Truth seeker.
Nice. I like it.
Actually, one of my customers' nickname for me is the Deal Killer.
The Deal Killer. I like it. So, and how much can we go back to the price? So let's talk about what was the price of this car listed.
The price of this car, I think the ask was $2.25. $225,000.
Like $2.25. I got that in my pocket. No, $225,000.
$225,000, and they were representing it as a restoration of an original car.
Restoration of original $225,000.
$225,000.
Are you guys paying attention? Because that's like my house. All right. So,
not in the Bay Area.
No, not in the Bay Area. Okay, two of those would be my house. All right, is that better?
Yeah.
But so.
You might be able to get a cardboard box for $225,000.
That's true in San Francisco, definitely for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe a refrigerator. When they open freezers or something.
Yeah.
So when we start to talk about that, right? So it was $225,000. How much were you able to negotiate for? Did you choose to not?
Oh, we didn't buy the car.
Okay.
We did not buy that car.
Can you give me some examples of why you didn't buy that car?
The glaring example it was a restoration of an original car, and it had a Volkswagen ignition switch in it.
Okay.
And right off the bat, if you're going to skimp on that, if it was an original car, it would have the original ignition switch with a Porsche key, not an aftermarket switch with a Volkswagen key.
Okay.
That was a dead giveaway, and they had cut so many corners in the restoration process. It's not even funny. And
sure.
I pointed a few things out to him and I asked him why they chose to do this route, why they choose that route, and I was actually abruptly asked to leave.
Okay, I believe that too. They're like, get out.
Yeah.
Get out. You're the Deal Killer.
Have a nice day, Bill.
So when we talk about PPI, right? So now we were telling these stories, and here I'm hearing Bill Eason, 007 running around Germany. This is what's in my mind. That's not the reality of it, though, right? So
that's a rare occasion.
Yeah, but you hear this, right? And they're like, and then I'm like, well, I could never afford your services, and I want to use your services next time I buy a car or sell a car. And you're like, no, it's actually not that expensive on average, and how can you really afford not to?
Oh, absolutely, you can't afford not to get a pre-purchase inspection. You must. If the car is going to be anything other than just a daily driver beater and it's under warranty, you need to get a pre-purchase inspection.
So can you give me, on average, what you think pre-purchase inspections go for?
Ballpark, I think the average is between $200 and $300.
That's it?
That's it.
So you're telling me for $200 or $300, no, that's stupid to not, especially when I'm buying a $40,000 toy.
I agree 100%.
To go run around canyons or a track day with. So with this pretty girl, can you just give me some examples of some things you would be looking for on this vehicle? if you were doing a pre-purchase inspection?
Sure. So this car is the last example of the Porsche 356 model. They had a pre-A, an A, a B, and a C. So this is a C. So it's the best version of the 356 they made. It's not necessarily the prettiest version, depending on your opinion. The bumpers are a little larger. They have bumper guards on it. The earlier cars are cuter. They're small. The bumpers are lower. They have smaller lights. But this is actually a more functioning car. This has disc brakes all four corners. This is one of the first production cars to have.
Really? And I always say there are things and there are cars.
Right.
You know, there are cars that, I mean, some of these vehicles are just things. They're not really cars, but Porsche builds cars that are things.
Oh yeah, you can get it. You could get in this car today and drive to Salt Lake City to go skiing. Absolutely no problem.
So can you give me an example?
You look, primarily you give it an overall look, and you're looking for obvious blemishes in the paint, obvious dents or things like that. And then you look at the gaps. For instance, the door gap on this is not perfect. It's nice, it's not perfect. And then I open and close the doors, and this one, sometimes it closes perfectly and sometimes it doesn't. That time it closed perfectly.
Which is interesting, it didn't ding. I thought all Porsches ding.
911s, not 356s.
Okay.
356s should have that thunk. And this one has the thunk.
I heard that thunk. Yeah. I was just waiting for the ding.
Yeah. So one of their really neat, unique things about 356s is both the deck lid and the hood. They have a unique way of keeping them up. There's no hood shocks or anything like that. There's nothing to release. There's no prop rod. It's all in the hinge. You lift it up, set it all the way down, and it comes down. To lift it up and hold it up, set up, and it should stay. If you try to push it down like this, you're gonna break something.
Okay.
The deck lids, they're so short, you probably won't break much. The hood operates the exact same way, and so many people try to pull the hood down, they bend right at the hinge.
No kidding.
And that's one of the first things I look for. I open the hood, and first of all, I see if it works, because sometimes one works and one doesn't, so the hood will stick like this, stick sideways. And then I look right at the hinges where it meets the hood, and if there's a ripple in the sheet metal, then I know somebody's done damage to it.
Okay.
And unfortunately, about 40% of them have damage done to them. So,
Sure, they're older cars though.
Yeah,
Does that make an older car unrecoverable because they had damage at one point?
it's not unrecoverable, but there's where the value of the pre-purchase inspection comes from.
Right.
Some people don't even know to look at that.
No,
right?
I wouldn't.
So let's say you spent all the money to fly me someplace, to pay my daily fee, to figure this out. Now this car's, he overpaid for this car, but let's say this car is a $100,000 car. And you paid me all in like $2,000 to get to where I'm going to look at the car. Well, I'm gonna save you $2,000 on that hood.
Sure.
On the price, because maybe the owner knew it, maybe he didn't. But
Sure.
I'm going to show that to them, to the seller, and I'm going to say, yeah, it's not quite right.
Okay.
And you can, that hood, because these cars are all hand built, that hood has a number on it. The hood, the deck lid, the doors, they're all marked with numbers that match the chassis. So if that hood or the doors don't have the numbers on them, or they're the wrong numbers, or they're bent, the provenance is not as good as it would be if it were all original.
laughing, right? Because we just had a real long dialogue that our director of production cut out about how this is an Irish screen, not a British screen on a German car.
No.
I promise you that engineer was hurt very badly. So I love this on a Porsche, and we were talking about colors. And the reason we were talking about colors is like if I wanted a Ferrari, I would get it in the most obnoxious color I could find. If I wanted a Porsche, I would not get it in silver. I would want it in, I don't know, rattle can black, whatever. Just not because it's not a classic color, but because it's so common.
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up. Really recently, the oddball colors for these cars have gained more, have given more value to the cars.
Really?
Yeah. I had a customer who wanted it's this obnoxious red. It's called Ruby Stone red.
Okay.
And they put them on the 964s in the 90s, and he paid an extra $25,000 for a Ruby Stone red car.
Wow. So when we talk about, can we go back to this? So I'm really in love with this car. I'm really in love with this car.
This is a neat car.
And so, last time I was here and I shot it, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
This time I'm here and I'm like, I love it. I know I can't afford it, and I'd have to like sell my soul or something to get it. But can you tell me a little bit about it, please?
Yeah, this is a really early production 911. That's the first 6 months of production of the cars. The serial number is 1517.
Wow.
So it's the 1500th car they built. 1500th 911 they built. Excuse me.
Sure.
So there's all kinds of things on it that are still evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Like little tiny details. For instance, on this particular car, those windshield wipers are wrong, but they're parked on the opposite side.
Okay.
Normally they're parked over here. Later cars are parked over here. This car they're parked over here. We see this. The bend is wrong. So somebody changed that at some point. The mirror isn't mounted on glass. It's mounted on the headlight. And this is the 356 part. It's not mounted. It's carryover from the 356. This has the same mirror as that car.
I'll be darned. And I love the wood steering wheel.
Yeah, it's got a wood steering wheel. The gauges are still the 5 gauge layout from a 911 that everybody's accustomed to, but it's painted. They're painted green, like the 356s were, whereas later on they're painted white.
So if you were going to do a PPI on this for me, right? Let's hypothetically, Jason's dreaming. Jason can't afford this car, not in his lifetime. But maybe in his lifetime. Who knows? Could be. But you know,
hey, that book deal's going to come through.
That book deal is going to come through. But if Jason could afford this car, could you describe what the PPI would be like that and how you would describe that to me?
Sure. Well, this car, like I said, it's really unique in the fact that it's so early. So the details on the car are important. Does it come with the original engine? Does it come with the original transmission?
Sure.
Can you prove it? Right? In this particular car, yes, yes, and yes.
Wow.
The number stamped on the engine is it's correctly stamped, and the font is correct, and it hasn't been altered. The stamping on the transmission is correct, it hasn't been altered, the font is correct. The documentation is a handwritten document from the factory. From 1965. It was delivered in Berkeley.
And it's Irish Green.
And it's Irish Green.
Okay.
And all that is on what's called the Cardex, which is essentially the car's birth certificate.
So this goes back to provenance, and we were discussing that offline a little bit.
Right.
When we're discussing what is provenance, because you'll hear people like, oh, I'm building the provenance of a 2019 Lamborghini Aventador, and I'm like, okay.
Well,
why would you?
That's kind of a funky example because you can't have provenance on something new.
Sure.
But provenance covers a wide range of things.
Mostly, I'm quoting a YouTuber, unnamed YouTuber.
No comment. So we just touched on provenance.
It's cool, bro. We all make mistakes.
We touched on provenance. It has the birth certificate, it has the Cardex, it has the engine number matches, the transmission number matches, the chassis number. All the stamps on the chassis number are correct, in the correct place, haven't been modified, haven't been altered. Next, we look at, for instance, the windshield wipers are not correct. So that's a negative. That's
sure.
A check mark. The headlights are not correct.
Sure.
They work great. They're an upgrade, but they aren't appropriate to the car. Right?
Okay.
They aren't period specific. This headlight never came on this car. it fits, it's from a later car. It works better, it makes the car better, doesn't make the car original. So the Provenance suffers, right? Then you look at long-term ownership. Does it have celebrity ownership? Does it have race history? This car's a street car, doesn't have any race history. But if you're looking at a car that
I
has
think
race
she's
history,
the prettiest girl in your shop.
currently I would agree with you. I like this car a lot.
I thought she was the prettiest girl in your shop last time. There was cool stuff there too.
I geek out on the early cars
Yeah.
because they have so many touches. They're changing things on the fly.
But they're
when
so
building these
elegant,
cars.
and they've never driven one. But they're just so elegant looking, and they look so engaging. Whereas a modern car doesn't really have that.
It's funny you reminded me of something. A few days ago, a customer asked me, what got you into Porsches? And what got me into Porsches the first time I sat in one, first time I drove one. I sat in it, and there's a phrase called falls to hand.
Sure.
Right? Every control was intuitive for me. The pedals. People who drive modern cars complain about the early cars, the early 911s and 914s. The pedals hinge on the floor instead of at the top. And
But that's the way your foot bends.
that's where your foot bends. And I'm short, so I like to sit low on the car, and that
Sure.
works because the foot you're stretching it. If you're sitting up higher, it's more intuitive to have the hinge at the top. But for me, the early cars, the early 911s, the early 914s, the Porsches, every control just, you can close your eyes and reach down and the gear shift's right where it should be. The steering wheel's right where it should be. And the thing that sealed it for me is Porsche, and Ferrari does this too, the tack is right in the middle and it's the biggest gauge. The speedometer's over here, the oil gauge is over here, the tack. The heart of these cars is the engine. The thing that makes Porsches and Ferraris so special is the engine, and the tack is the heartbeat of the engine. You have it presented to you right in your face, in the middle, with no obstruction from the steering.
Sure.
In these cars, everything for me just falls to hand. The steering wheel is exactly where I just reach out and I can close my eyes and that's where it is. I thought I wanted to like Ferraris. I really wanted to like Ferraris. First time I drove one, pedals over there, steering wheel's over, the gear shifts, and the steering wheel's tilted kind of funny.
Now.
Don't like it.
Okay.
Maybe it works for somebody else. Doesn't work for me. The modern Ferraris, they fit me better. But the vintage Ferraris, no, I don't like driving them. They're pretty.
Oh, really?
They're really pretty. They're beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Engine's fantastic. Build
Not
quality,
drivers' cars.
Build quality, not so much.
Well, they're Ferraris. So I
Modern Ferraris are great.
Well, yeah, the modern Ferrari is. That's like saying, but some of the soul is taken out of it too.
I agree.
You know, so when you're telling me like, hey man, a Cayman R is the thing for you. You know what I mean? You're making a recommendation based on my passions or things I notice or communicate.
Of course. You try to match the car to the client.
Bill, thanks for joining us, and
Have a
as
great time.
always, Bill's a regular feature on Chasing the Apex, so thanks for joining us, and thank you guys for watching Chasing the Apex. Please like, subscribe, comment below, and it's really important. It helps us rank in the YouTube algorithm, and Bill would probably say we'll rank up there with the posers someday if we can get that kind of interaction. Bill, do you have anything for him?
I think Jason is going to be doing some great things. I think you should watch the channel a lot. I think he's developing and evolving in a really fascinating way. And if you want to check out what I do, I've got an Instagram. It's at Eason Auto.
Link below.
The link is below. I don't know where below is, but
It'll be in the comment section. Check there. You'll see his Instagram link.
and if you need a pre-purchase inspection on a Porsche, I am available worldwide.